All right, hello, and welcome back to the Futurism at JHU podcast. Today, I'm joined with Max and Ricardo, who you guys already know.
What's up,
Hello.
guys?
And we're also joined by Will, who is a neuro and computer science major at JHU.
What's up, guys? It's great to be here.
All right, so today's topic is going to be body modifications. So, to kind of start the conversation off, I wanted to ask Will, who's actually done some research on this, where are we as far as body enhancing technology goes?
So, body enhancing technology is kind of like a very broad subject where it's broken up into stuff like gene modification, there's surgical modification, as well as BCI, like brain to computer interfaces. And the stuff I've been working on is the latter, BCIs. I should probably not use BCI, brain to computer interfaces, which are basically like any kind of interface where you have neurons or some kind of nervous system talking or communicating to a external computer, right? So this could be electrodes. That's like the simplest BCI that you can get, and it goes from there, and it like develops a little bit more complex with different kinds of electrodes and how deep they penetrate the brain. So I've been working in a lab that's basically doing routine testing with a very developed BCI called Argus 2. And Argus 2 is basically a vision system for blind people to help them see at least a little bit of what the external world, their external world is. So how it works is basically we have a implant, a microchip that has roughly a 10 by 16 electroarray implanted to each of their eyes, and that microchip is wired to a camera on a pair of sunglasses, or not sunglasses, but like glasses. And as those glasses pick up sensory or visual input from the external world, right, it translates that into electrode stims, and that gives the person a rough estimate of their surroundings. And this is, at this point, it's mature. This technology is mature, but at the same point, like this is also like one of the first clinical applications of this. So there's a lot to go from here.
That is so cool. Yeah. Like, how far in the future do you think, or how much time do you think it would take for this to be something that is like readily available to, typical citizens? Like, if there is a blind person who wants to be able to see, like, do you think that's something that we'll see in the near future? Like, that blind people will sort of be, quote, cured of blindness in a way?
So right now, I know that Argus 2 was a commercial product, but it seems like, from my knowledge, the parent company that used to develop Argus 2, I think, went under. So right now we're just keeping the project afloat, but I'm sure there are other like BCIs that help blind people and other people with disabilities, through their daily lives. I can think of one, like cochlear implants are very commonplace, right? And they're relatively not that expensive, and they're readily available, right? So that's already one that's permeated society. Trying to think. Hopkins also has like they're developing vestibular implants that help people that have damage to the vestibular system, which helps you keep balance. There's lots of development, but it's kind of hard to see when exactly it will be commercially available to everybody that has those kind of conditions, because it's a very small market and it's hard to expand that.
That's so exciting.
So I know we kind of threw around the term like body modification. So I kind of want to hear from you guys, like, what does that mean to you? Like, how far does the definition of like body modification or like body enhancing tech, how far does that definition go, would you say?
I personally think that, or I basically have two definitions for it, if you will. I have a type which enhances what's already, on the regular human system. So just making the abilities, it be like, lifting things or being able to see further, things of that sort, just enhancing what you already have. And another one is more of implementation, where maybe if you don't have something, you're able to now get that. Like in the case of, this visual aid to help those that are not able to see. So I think, at least to me, body modification is categorized into two terms: the enhancing part and the sort of equality part, if you will, that just sort of balances things out for those that are not able to uh, or not have the abilities that the majority of the population has.
So obviously we have like very ambitious projects going on. Like I can think of a great example is Neuralink with like their brain tech, brain implants. So kind of moving on to the vein of ongoing and like future projects. What do you guys think about that? Like what are the most exciting projects, and do you think it could be possible to have tech like brain implants and stuff?
I certainly think so. Like for example, if you look at Neuralink, it's their entire message is to start out by curing people with paralysis, or at least helping their condition, by being able to sort of put those people back in touch with those parts of their brain. And I think from there, once we sort of master that skill, I guess, and sort of have a clear understanding of what that takes, I think that we can really expand from there into different territories. Like I know at one point you were saying that eventually at some point we could create a bionic eye of sorts that would be able to see, things not in, the spectrum of the light spectrum that we can normally see, so like being able to see what did you say, like ultraviolet?
Ultraviolet,
Yeah.
radio waves, microwaves, like everything outside of what we can normally see. Obviously, so my idea was obviously we have tech that can see those things, but my idea would be how cool it'd be to have literally a bionic eye. So this is input that your own brain is processing to be able to experience things outside of. There's this term called like the Umwelt. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but the neuroscientist David Eagleman, who's like one of my favorite neuroscientists, highly recommend. He kind of coined this term where it's the Umwelt is basically the human experience, like the very limited human experience. And you know how like other animals, they can sense outside of what humans can experience. So my idea was how cool would it be to be able to see radio waves, to see microwaves, to see ultraviolet firsthand, and like kind of see the world in a way that no human has seen before. Obviously, that's not like a practical thing. That's more of like, how cool would that be?
Right, yeah.
But just, yeah, to be able to like expand the, so-called Umwelt and kind of experience the world in like a whole new way. I just find that idea like really fascinating.
Yeah, totally agree. I don't even think that lies outside of like what's reasonable. I think that is sort of something that's sort of just outside of our grasp right now, actually. You know what I mean? Like, for example, I think that a small, like an example of this on a small scale, I think would be the people who are colorblind and then they wear the glasses that allows them to be able to see different colors. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but in a way, they're sort of experiencing something outside of what they've typically been able to experience as a human.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so in some way, I think that the brain is like it has the potential to sort of experience things outside of what it's able to really naturally perceive at first, right? So I think that if we're able to sort of give the brain some other sensory perception, like way to interpret sensory perception, like a new tool of sorts, then I think it would be totally possible for people to sort of experience things outside of what we experience with the five senses.
that reminds me actually. This goes back to David Eagleman, who kind of like actually inspired me to go into neuroscience. But he has this TED talk where he introduces this vest, basically for people who are basically like sensory deprivated or deprived, sorry, who like can't see, can't hear, and basically the vest allows them to basically see in terms of vibrations like on their back.
Oh, whoa.
So they learn, this is the idea of the brain can, the brain is locked in like this vault of darkness, and it just kind of takes what it, like the senses throw at it, and
Right,
just
yeah.
kind of like knows what to do with it, like figures it out, like, figures out the patterns. But the idea is these people can actually now see, and they can be fed like input through these vibrations, and they learn to see through vibrations.
Wow.
So that's like a whole, and this has actually been done. Like these patients can actually see stuff through the vibrations. So yeah, I feel like, I mean, in theory, you could throw any external kind of input to the brain, and I feel like the brain could probably figure it out. Like there's a lot of untapped potential there.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like such a cool example of sort of what you were talking about like hardware body modifications.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like just sort of like in the sense of like, I think the other day you were talking about like, different suits that people can wear that would be considered like a body modification in a way.
Yeah, so one of the things that I was talking about is right now, a lot of industries, especially automotive ones, where you have factories where things that are pretty heavy need to be carried and attached onto moving vehicles, things of that sort, obviously require more people to do it. So the way that they've sort of combated this was to create a sort of exosuit or exoskeleton. Obviously, it's still attached to the building. You can't just take it anywhere with you. But it'll essentially aid you in lifting things up that a person wouldn't normally be able to. So in that way, it's sort of like an external, more disconnected part of like enhancing of the human abilities. But yeah, so that's like a technology that is available right now, and a lot of industries are using it for various different things. But it's something that I feel like in the near future could potentially be used in other scenarios. Maybe if you're a firefighter and you need to, you're in a rescue mission and you need to, clear debris of a building. Blocks of concrete can be extremely heavy. So having something that can enhance your power output as a human can be extremely helpful in scenarios where you're trying to help people. So I feel like those types of technologies, and the fact that we are pretty close to having them just be their own thing, because we already essentially have them, right? It would just be adapting them to different scenarios. I feel like we're really close to that, at least some type of reality, in a way where people can use more than what their bodies can do to help other people.
Ooh, that's really interesting. So this is kind of changing gears entirely. Like I really like that idea, but I guess this goes into like the brain and neuroscience and kind of Neuralink, but this is very, very, very hypothetical. But what if we could, this goes to the classic like brain chip example, but what if we could implant like a chip in the brain, and once it's implanted, could we like upload skills? Like could we upload the ability to, to know Russian or to know Mandarin or to know French? Could we upload like different abilities? Like, is that something, do you guys see that being possible? And also, I guess this goes into the ethics of it, but if we could do that, what kind of ethical dilemmas does that raise? Because that clearly gives an advantage to some people. And obviously it could worsen like wealth disparities. So it's kind of a two-parter question,
Right,
but
yeah.
I'm curious what you guys think about that.
From like a CS standpoint, it seems totally possible. So I want to hear the neuroscience people like what do you guys think of that?
So, like right now, like I think as Nicholas mentioned before, the brain is kind of like a black box. We kind of know what it does. We know how like the functions of the neurons. But even to that degree, we kind of don't know exactly everything. But we do know like the general structure of the brain. It's been a study topic for it's been a study topic for centuries. So we do have a general grasp of that, but what exactly are the purpose of like those individual neurons within your brain that are responsible for like categorizing semantics and all these other like kinds of, let's say, archetypes or kind of like concepts. That is a very difficult question, and also it could like vary from person to person. So for example, in a course that I've taken, people's um, their auditory perception or processing could be left lateralized, so it could be on the left side of the brain, or it could be on the right side, or both. And we're not quite sure why exactly that varies between people. So even like on a larger scale, it to me seems like a very complex question, and one that does not really have a viable solution at this point in time.
Okay,
Okay.
so just so that like I can understand, like if we were to sort of translate that back into like, I guess computer terms in a way, would you say that each individual mind is kind of like its own operating system, and thus it would be kind of impossible to, like theoretically impossible to download new information because you don't know how it would function within that OS, in a way?
Not exactly, but
Okay.
there are like minute details within, let's say, like semantic processing that make it hard for people to, or even people like multilingual people to have like the same pathways and stuff. Um, it is very. I think it's doable. It's definitely doable, but there needs to be a lot more work done in that area in order for that to be possible.
So if we could do it in theory, obviously it sounds, all these technologies are
Yeah.
obviously very ambitious endeavors and it will take a lot of work. But if we were to make that possible, going back into the ethical question of it, yeah, like what ethical dilemmas does that raise? Like if these, obviously it's going to be the wealthy people who are getting these brain transplant or implants first, and now they can speak all the languages in the alphabet and they have all these skills and they're basically superhumans in a way. So what are the ethics of that? Like how do we democratize the technology so that not only the wealthy are, getting are receiving the benefits of it?
Wow, what a loaded question, Nicholas. But I think that's a good point. I do want to expand upon the fact that it's going to become like a total huge social issue once we sort of start having technology like this where people are physically modifying themselves, because it's going to make that person more capable to do different kinds of work, and it's going to make them more valuable as I guess more valuable as a citizen in a capitalist society. So it makes it so that people who have money are easily able to acquire more money. Not that that's not already the case, but it would increase the disparity so much more, I think, and it would give people who have wealth such an advantage, in a world where having that advantage would mean so much. You know what I mean? Like the disparity would suddenly like split so far, I think.
Yeah, but it's kind of hard to avoid that general trend in my opinion, because if you look at, let's say, previous technologies, for example, the personal processing computer, like your PC, right? Those were. It started off with huge multi-building like supercomputers at that time that cost millions of dollars and took 50 people to operate. So, and then it went down to, let's say, a more reasonable cost, like around, let's say, $15,000 for PC. But if you look at that, $15,000 was an unreasonable price for something that was barely functioning and had very limited use. But as that development and that implementation got further along, prices dropped, and now almost everybody has some sort of like mobile tech, right, that they can easily pull out. And if you were talking to like somebody from the 1990s and you said, "Oh, this iPhone, let's say, is more powerful than the world's most powerful supercomputer," like, do you get where I'm going?
Totally get it.
Yeah, so with developing technologies, they're always going to be available to the wealthy at the beginning, but over time, it should disperse as long as like supply and demand and the usefulness of that technology is there.
That's true, but I think that something like the technology we're talking about right now would be more immediately useful than, say, a computer, because I feel like the practical applications of a computer in its early stages, like there were very few practical applications. Like I'm thinking, you could use it as a calculator. It was mostly used for business, whereas with this kind of technology, it seems like it would be useful almost right away to anybody. But I guess it would take time for there to be development in that field, so it would sort of, the learning curve would be kind of like a computer, in the same way. So I feel like it's a little bit of both, but I don't know. That's sort of a tough thing because it really depends on how it plays out, and we can't possibly know that right now.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I also kind of thought in that same way, where if you were to release a fully developed technology just out into the market right now, it would be way different than it's developing over the years to the extent of what could potentially happen. So what you were saying with the computer, that's like a super well thought out example. That is certainly true. So I think that especially with computer chips and various body modifications, it'll definitely be sort of a risky thing at first. Where nobody's going to be going into it head first, and a lot of technologies will have to develop. Maybe we have the technology and hardware available to us, but maybe not the software. Maybe you need a smart person to be able to develop that. Maybe it's a person-to-person kind of thing, where if you have the abilities as a person to develop that technology yourself, you're able to take part in greater treasures that most necessarily not just somebody with money can necessarily have. So I feel like that might also level the playing field a little bit. And as well, is something that I've thought about, but would like the disparity between abilities necessarily equal each other if you say you give a smart person a chip to make them smarter, to make maybe an average person the chip? Like, would they be the same?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah,
really, like take somebody who's already skilled in that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like at that point, like if you're able to control what's already there, it would sort of level the playing field. So it could bring, like everybody would sort of be brought up to the, like let's say just generally there's a chip that influences one's intelligence, right?
Right.
I feel like that chip would then sort of be taking over that part of that person's brain as opposed to like giving it a boost, right? So,
Okay.
just speaking hypothetically, it sort of seems like it would level the playing field in a way. What do the neuroscience people think?
Yeah, so I guess my view on that is like if you have technology that augments like your current abilities to the extent that like the level of your current ability doesn't matter, then I think that's where like you reach like the true equilibrium, like that. Not so much as in like it replaces your brain functions, because consciousness is a little bit of a tricky topic that we still don't fully understand yet.
All right, so with that, that's going to be the end of our second official podcast. So these are some great questions to think about. Think about what types of body modifications could be possible, and also thinking about how can we democratize the tech and make sure not only the wealthy are benefiting from it. So with that, thank you, Will. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Max. And we'll see you guys on the next one.
Awesome.
It's been a
Thanks,
pleasure.
guys.
See ya.
See you guys.
See ya.